Okay guys, so I'm going to go ahead and talk through two of the proofs from the homework from last night. Let's go ahead and start with page 64, question number 6. Okay, this is the given information. That's what they're asking us to prove, and then here's the picture. Okay, so as always, we're going to go ahead and start with just stating that given information. Okay, then we're going to see if we can draw a conclusion using this, right? Well, what does this symbol mean? That stands for perpendicular. Okay, so that means that angle 1 and angle 2 are going to have to be right angles, right, by definition of perpendicular lines, right? If two segments are perpendicular, then they form right angles. Okay, then we could also conclude that angle 2 is a right angle, again, by definition of perpendicular lines. Okay, and if angle 1 is a right angle, that means that the measure is 90 degrees. Okay, and that's by definition of what a right angle is. Okay, then we could also conclude that angle 2 is 90 degrees by definition. Okay, and that means that angle 1 has to equal the measure of angle 2 if we use substitution, or you could think of it as a transitive property. Okay, but you could also think about it as substituting in measure of angle 2 everywhere that you see 90. Okay, and now we can go ahead and make our conclusion that these angles are congruent to each other, right, by definition of congruent angles. But this actually seems pretty familiar. This is a proof that we actually have already done before, so let's talk about that. Okay, we proved a theorem the other day that said that all right angles are congruent. Remember, once we prove a theorem, we're allowed to use it from this point forward in the course. Okay, so my recommendation to you is to make a note card. Okay, this is a theorem you want to know. That way you can use it whenever you are needing to. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this proof one more time. Okay, but this time we're going to recall this theorem and use this theorem to our advantage. Okay, so start with your statements, reasons. Okay, you're going to give your given information per usual. Okay, then we can make the conclusion that these are right angles. Now in this example, I illustrated the fact that in proofs you can write multiple statements, okay, that are using the same reason as long as you separate them by commas. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this all in one statement and reason. Okay, then we can make the conclusion that angle 1 has to be congruent to angle 2 because all right angles are congruent. This is a theorem that we proved, and so we can now use it. All right, so instead of having a proof that was, look, 7 steps long, by using the fact that we can combine multiple steps into one step, and using this theorem that we proved, we just condensed this to a 3-step proof. Okay, I'm going to do one more example with you, and then this video will be done. We're going to look at question number 64. Page 64, question number 7. Okay, it looks like this. This is your given information, including your picture. They want us to prove that angle C is congruent to angle D. Okay, if we start with our 2 columns, okay, we can go ahead and state the given information. Remember, you could state it in 2 different steps, or you could state it in one single step and separate it by a comma. Well, then let's go ahead and start drawing some conclusions about this picture. Well, what does that symbol mean? It means that those lines are perpendicular. And if AD, that segment, is perpendicular to BD, right, that's a right angle. Okay, so we can conclude that angle ADB is right. Right, and that's by definition of congruent segments. Okay, we can also conclude that if angle ACB measures 90 degrees, then angle ACB has to be a right angle as well. Okay, that's just by definition. Okay, well then, let's go back to that theorem that we talked about. If both of these are right angles, then we could conclude that they are congruent to each other because all right angles are congruent, that theorem that we proved a few days ago. Notice I went from using 3 letters to using 1 letter. That's because they used 1 letter specifically, and you always want your last statement to match what they're asking you to prove. So I'm okay with using just 1 letter since angle C can't be confused for another angle in this picture, and angle D can't be confused for another angle in this picture. Okay, pause the video, rewind, come to class with questions if you still have them. Thanks, guys.